Hello and welcome to Name a Podcast. Did I do it
What
right?
is her name? We should probably figure that out before starting.
It's the
Uh,
Stephanie and JP Reach Stream Show.
I like this. All right, we'll figure that out later. um,
EOJP. The Web3 show. Is there a Web3 show? If not, like that's us. We're just going
okay,
to
the web
claim it.
three
The Web3 cast. We have the cast of
featuring
Web3.
JP and Estefania. All
I
right.
like it. Very serious. You had me for a second. Let's talk about NFTs. NFTs are hot. I wonder if in the current state they're a little oversold, but here we are. Some say they're dead.
Some say they're dead. Um,
What say you?
I say they are not dead. I say this is a meme, and it's quite a funny meme. And actually, yesterday I was thinking, thinking just how crazy this NFT phenomenon is, right? So I come from a traditional art background, and just thinking how galleries there's almost sometimes suffer trying to sell art to their collectors, right? And then you think about something like an NFT craze, where you see people on the internet just constantly trading art, even though they don't
Right,
realize like a lot of these NFTs, digital art pieces are actually art. So it's
right.
pretty amazing to see that not just thousands, but like billions of dollars are being exchanged right now in art as form of an NFT. So I'd say that's pretty incredible for creators.
Do you know what the market cap is on NFTs right now? Is like a whole industry or sector?
Let's look at it.
I imagine it's got to be in millions of dollars, especially with some of those top hitters like Board Board Apes Yacht Club. And
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like I saw somewhere that like just OpenSea itself was like over a few billion.
it's wild. And what about like we're trading, there's trading going on, there's a lot of interest, and there's this new form of art. What about the utility? So where are we at with that?
Real quick,
Yeah.
$13.3 billion dollars
Wow.
in NFT sales.
That is not
Um,
insignificant.
yeah, and that is, I believe that's 2021. So that is not no big deal.
Yeah, that ain't no big deal there. That's a big deal.
Yeah,
And that's only going to grow, right? Like this is nascent.
that is absolutely true. And you talked about utility. Okay, so where's the
Yeah.
utility there? So again, like I feel like we think about it as art because that is the visual aspect that we see, and that's what kind of gave it legs, right? To carry over to the mainstream is that something beautiful that was able to be collected um, and owned and truly owned. So I'd say like utility comes in when we think about like what the NFT is, right? So like true ownership, whether it's self-sovereign ownership, something that no one can take away from you because it's on this digital ledger that's going to live on forever, being the blockchain. And there's certain creators who do think about this above and beyond, who might be even tech savvy or work with developers to add on to their NFTs. So that could be things like token gating, things like giving you access to things. So sometimes they work sort of like a membership pass.
Hmm.
That's kind of been the main hit that I've seen. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely seen the membership pass. I mean, I think Board Apes Yacht Club is one of the most well known, right? Where you have this. There's other ones for like getting into games, like sports arenas and things like that, and having access to the what do they call them? The booths and the show boxes.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
and then there's also a lot of communities, right? Like I see a lot of babies groups. There's a lot of like groups within different consensus networks that you kind of have like you're a fan of photography or something. You own these NFTs to show that you're part of this membership and part of this group. So it's almost like a Lions Club, right? For millennials and for Web3.
It's like the clubs are coming back. We couldn't get out of
Yeah.
high school. Just kidding. Um, well, but not necessarily just that, right? Because we're living in a world where we are thinking about consensus and verification and being a part of this trustless network. So, in many
Mhm.
ways, too, being a holder of said tokens kind of taps into the identity aspect or reputation aspect, too.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I've seen many tokens like do that, where like maybe you have to prove that you're a human before you can mint, but I think that that in itself is what NFTs will eventually lead into. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I wonder if some of this is a pushback on like the isolation that a lot of people have felt during the pandemic, and then a lot of cultures and work cultures pushing employees to just work and grind out as hard as they can in grind culture, where the emphasis was really on making a buck, and it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for like friends and families. And I think this is just me pulling something out of the air, but I wonder if there's not some kind of a reaction to that as well, and people wanting to be part of something that's beyond themselves and beyond like grinding for dollars.
Well, I would agree with that a little bit, because I know reflecting from my experience of watching NFTs late 2020, kind of just brushing them out of the way, being like, "Oh, millions of dollars, cool. This is just like a media thing that they're doing, so people are somewhat interested, right?" And maybe it was. But then fast forward, me getting into the space, maybe March of 2021, I was on Twitter and Discord just trying to navigate like what these new communities or ecosystems were and learning that a lot of them were driven by these PFPs, these profile picture projects, being those 10K generative NFT projects being launched. And I noticed, well, one of the first communities I noticed was the Bored Apes. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, this is so cool. People just kind of like hang out together and they like, they ape into things together and they
Right,
support one another no matter what. And I was like, wow, this is a great community. And I personally was seeking something more than working from home and
right,
being alone, being around my own little circle, especially
yeah,
considering I had also just moved to like Arizona at the time. So I was like, I have no
mhm,
friends. Maybe I'll make friends online. So that to me was like I have to get in. I need to figure out like what this means. And so I was
right,
looking for community. So I do think that that definitely probably spikes something
mhm,
considering, like, people had nothing better to do than be on the internet for a long
right.
time.
It's almost a perfect storm.
Yeah.
So imagine I know nothing about NFTs, and I certainly know less than you do on this subject, but I know like nothing, and I'm interested. Where do I start? How do I get into this?
Yeah, so I think and this is maybe a little meta and, um, not for everyone, but I truly think people should start with, like, why? Like, why do you care to get into the space? Because like, if that's
Mhm.
not strong enough and you're just looking to make a quick flip, that's not guaranteed. So,
Right.
um, the reason why that question matters is because once you figure out, like, what destination it is you wanna get to, so if it is a financial incentive, then figure out, like, what that financial incentive is for, say, maybe, like, one project that you buy on the floor and, like, it's at, like, 0.05 ETH, right, at the
Mhm.
time, and you wanna somehow flip this or flip a couple of them, and you've decided to come in with, like, $500 or whatever, okay. Well, be strategic about it, do some research, figure out how the markets work, figure out how the communities work, figure out if the communities are even gonna be around for a long time to give it value.
Yeah.
Um, so just like starting out, if like that, if you have a trader mentality, then do your research and figure out what traders are doing to trade on FTs because it's not luck. Like as much as you hear about people having these great wins, it's not
Yeah.
luck. A lot of these individuals are coming in from actually traditional finance backgrounds and learning the markets, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, doing their research by joining communities, and then observing what's happening. And then based on that, that's when they buy in, even if they have to buy a little bit higher than what was originally intended. So that's what I would say, especially for those thinking about the monetary gains. If you're someone like myself, who's maybe a little bit more creative, more of a collector, I'm definitely a collector. So for me, buying NFTs wasn't something that I was like, oh, I'm just going to flip. Like, no, I love this art. I'm going to hold on to it. And I'm curious to see what happens. Maybe
Yeah.
establish some wonderful connections with people in those communities. So um, for someone like that, I would say like, okay, why are you investing in certain artists? What has this artist done that's maybe creative or different or stands out from the rest of your collection? Do you have a type of collection? Like, are you a photography art collector? Are you are you a generative art collector? So there's also different genres in the NFT space to consider and be mindful of because there's and another thing is the platforms. So being mindful of like where these NFTs live. So if you don't understand the technology behind NFTs, also just learn what that is. And some great resources are going even to the Ethereum website, right? Figure out what the ERC 721 standard means,
Like,
which
oh.
is basically the beginning of it all. And then from there, just you know, take your necessary risks to get started, but invest time and do the research.
Yeah. So what I got out of this is that it can be learned. This is something that you can learn, and if you're looking for solid communities, that's not just luck. So I wonder, starting with communities, how do you know that a community is going to be around? That's kind of, it seems like that's hard to tell, but maybe you have insight on like how I can know if it's they're going to be around after they finish the initial minting.
Yeah, it's kind of silly to say, but sometimes what I've noticed other traders or collectors talk about is when a team is doxxed, when a team
Mhm.
reveals their identity. So that's usually one of the indicators that these people are putting their names behind something, their faces behind something, and they're putting their reputation on the line. And I think when someone puts their reputation on the line, it really allows for that want to succeed. I think our egos usually win. So we will want to do everything in our power to make something successful because we usually don't want to let people down, especially in a space where maybe it's so little right now, and you have the
Right.
ability to get sort of like ostracized from the community
Yeah.
if you do something wrong. Um, so I would say that's the one thing to consider. Another
Mhm.
thing to consider is if you do join these communities, usually you'll be redirected to a Discord server because this is kind of where the NFT communities do hang out currently. And in those Discord servers, there's a lot of interaction sometimes. Good servers will usually have genuine interaction amongst other members of the community. There's usually not much conversation on like floor price. People aren't talking about like, oh, why are people listing them so low? Like, they're not talking about flips. They're genuinely interested in growing their community with intent. And not just that, but like at the end of the day, when you buy an NFT, you're essentially buying the IP, the intellectual property. And with that, what most people don't realize is you hold so much power. Like what you do with that IP is completely up to you. And you also have the ability to like raise the value of your community if you launch something incredible. So, for example, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, the best example. So, they
Right.
created this amazing brand, anonymous founders to start, right?
Mhm.
But there were people in the community who were just like hyping the project. I would actually credit people like Farouk in this because he's the one who was like going into clubhouse rooms, Twitter spaces, and just pumping the apes, getting his friends to
Yeah.
buy. And then other friends are buying in, right? And then they created the value for the community. Now they've created this sort of like brand, streetwear brand that many people are starting to recognize. And this wasn't necessarily something that was driven by the Bored Ape team. They did promise the roadmap and completely fulfilled their roadmap as well. So I would
Yeah.
say also just holding these communities accountable as they get to different places in their roadmaps is a good way to signal whether something is going to stick around. Because if they're being true to that, then that's great. Sometimes you have new NFT projects coming in saying they're going to release a game after 1 year. Meanwhile, no one in the community's like, or not a community, but none of the founders are actually gamers or have ever built out a game before. So it
Right.
seems kind of silly when people contradict their sort of initial foundational true skills. So it's
Check the
interesting.
message.
Yeah. Feels
Yeah,
like people,
verify, right?
yeah, exactly, right? We're living in a
Right.
trustless world, so it's about like how you hold your team or the co-founders accountable.
Yeah. So you said like I own the IP. So if I have an ape or a salamander or whatever it might be, I can make that as part of my branding, right? Like I could wrap my car in that character and use that for whatever I'm doing. If it's I'm like a real estate agent or some kind of a coach or a guru or whatever, like
Yeah,
that could be part of my whole branding too.
exactly. And that's the best part because you have the ability to take someone else's art and create a whole business around it, which is incredible. And considering the art that's out there right now, some people might even be able to start entire clothing lines.
That's cool. That's pretty cool. The other thing you had said earlier was pay attention to where they live. And I think what you mean by that is the consensus network, the blockchain. So we live in a
Yeah.
multi-blockchain world. Like there's a whole bunch of different blockchains out there, and different ones have different NFT communities. I wonder if there's more to that.
Yeah. So, like you said, blockchains. Um, right now, there's many easy ways for creators to come and mint their projects. So, one of those platforms is OpenSea. OpenSea has this thing called lazy minting. So you can mint your NFT, and minting is essentially like uploading it to the blockchain.
Hmm.
But when you mint it, it doesn't actually mint to the blockchain until someone buys it. And then when someone buys it, paying for they're paying the gas, which is the small fee you pay for it to actually be mined into the blockchain. So, something like that is interesting because you could say you minted something on this date, but the truth is like it's actually not even on the blockchain, and it's not even minted until someone buys.
Interesting.
Um, and the other thing is if this is living on possibly an OpenSea contract, think about like what happens if OpenSea shuts down one day? Is your work
Right.
still going to live? Is it on IPFS, which is the interplanetary file system, which is the sort of open um,
It's like an open protocol for file storage.
that
Yeah.
exactly? And so that's what you want to look for is those protocols for storage and think like do you want to go through a middleman to do that? Do you want to create your own contracts to ensure that yours lives on this blockchain forever? So that's what I mean about considering where things live.
Cool. That's great. Well, I think that really covers NFTs unless you have anything
I have
else to
questions
talk
for
about
you.
on that. Okay, hit me.
Yeah. So I know you collect some NFTs on the Algorand ecosystem. I'm more of like an ETH maxi, not on purpose.
Yeah.
It's just like kind
Yeah.
of what I knew first. But I'm curious, like from your experience, and if you even have compared both blockchains, like have you noticed anything that stands out to you when you're like buying NFTs on Algorand versus Ethereum? And if so, like what are they?
I think the NFT community as a whole is much more organized on Ethereum. I think there's more tools. I know Algorand has tools, but they're not as well known and they're not as publicized. Maybe that just has to do with like the overall popularity of Ethereum versus Algorand, right? Which for those who aren't familiar, Ethereum is the like OG smart contract consensus network, right? Won the early wars of the consensus networks, and Algorand is a fairly newer blockchain that I believe is better technology. You look at the technology, and it makes sense to me. The, but getting back to the NFTs, Algorand NFTs, maybe as a result of being less popular, less organized, do seem to be cheaper. So you can find some really nice NFTs on Algorand for like 50 algos, which is right now less than $50 USD. And if those were on Ethereum, they would be going for $2,000 to $4,000 easy. So I think Algorand is more accessible. So someone who wants to get into NFTs, but they don't have thousands of dollars, they don't have that kind of disposable income, and I would definitely say check out Algorand. I bought a bunch of NFTs for 1 algo, 5 algos, 10
Really?
algos. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I've got a Algo all. I don't know if it's the actual Algo all, but I bought some of those for like 10 to 20 algos.
What?
I've got a photograph. So the other thing I look for is like my friends. I just want to support my friends out there. So if I see friends who are be like, support my friend, they got this NFT, I'll go ahead and do that just because they're a friend of a friend, just to help support the community. And I like these people. I want to see them do well. I want to see their friends do well. So this is one small way that I can help raise the tide, right? Um, so I do have some. I have like 4 NFTs on Ethereum, and I like them. I'm waiting for the game to come out. I'm a little nervous that it may never, but we'll see. And I like what I've got on Algorand too. I think I'll probably buy more on Algorand. Um, yeah, there's some projects that I'm excited about that are coming out on Algorand that I think are going to be legit. So
Have you ever
let me
minted your own NFTs?
we tried. We kind of did. So we were at ETH Denver and we were going to mint some pizza box, but it was like the technology has changed a little bit. Like crypto never sleeps, right? And the technology is always changing. There was a time when you could mint a whole class of NFTs that were essentially the same thing, and you just give them out as like participation proofs. And I think I'm now thinking about that. Maybe we should have just done a POAP, right, rather than an NFT. POAPs don't seem to be as hot though, and we should probably define that. Was that proof of authenticated participation? Is that right?
Of attendance protocol.
Of attendance protocol, proof of attendance protocol. I'm just making up my own words.
It's a
And maybe
great new protocol though.
thanks. Yeah. So I think that maybe that was appropriate as a POAP, and maybe that's a POAP is meant for like, hey, you were part of this thing, here you go, and
Yeah.
we can mass produce that. Whereas an NFT ought to be a one of one, just like we think of that as like an analog would be like an analog work of art, something in the real world. We can make prints, and they're not as valuable, but you could also get like the one of ones, right? The originals, and that's really where the value is. And I think there's some value there. So I do have a Zestbloom account, and I know some people like the photography, some people don't. I really have enjoyed photography since I was like as a kid, a teenager. And so I've got some old shots from my 35 millimeter Pentax that I'm thinking about bringing out and scanning and digitizing and putting those up, minting those, and see what happens with them.
I didn't realize Zestbloom was live. That's amazing. And also, fun fact, it's built on Reach,
Yeah,
um, which is pretty incredible. And yeah, their marketplace actually looks phenomenal. I'm looking at it right now.
they have a really pretty GUI. Yeah, their user interface is lovely.
This is really awesome. I had no idea. I'm just gonna share my screen real quick to show people.
Cool.
Let's see. There
Maybe
we
a little
go.
more. There you go. Right on.
Wow, this is beautiful.
It is a beautiful site. So yeah, built on Reach. As a matter of fact, check it out. I've got a Zestbloom sticker with me right here.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love their stickers. Yeah, very intelligent founders as when we met them in Austin. I was really impressed by their presentation, showing us how their AI and is it AI that they use in order to recognize certain sort of like traits or characteristics within the NFTs, and also to figure out if things are like being copied.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. So they've
incredible.
got this really like AI driven search engine that allows you to search the NFT marketplace basically. And so yeah, it's really cool. That was funny. They did a demonstration at Summit, And someone asked, what about Chris Weiner? And we didn't have any Chris Weiner NFTs, but it did recognize that Chris had a beard, which was interesting.
Yeah. There was another question I had for you. So you also talked about community and exploring other marketplaces on Algorand versus Ethereum.
Yeah.
Do you think that, or no, sorry, this is going to get cut out. Yeah. Okay. um, Oh yeah, so you talked about the differences and the changes currently being implemented as crypto evolves so quickly. But there's something that stood out to me. So we were trying to create multiple assets when we were in Denver, right?
Hmm.
And from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, the Algorand ecosystem has an ASA. So an
Yeah.
ASA being like their asset class, which
Algorand
is a
standard asset.
right, so a little different than, say, the ERC-721, which is the
Yes.
NFT standard on Ethereum,
Right.
because an ASA is technically the ERC-20 standard on Ethereum.
Hmm.
Now how does, or does Algorand have a new standard for NFTs, or does it and will it continue to use the ASAs as the
Yes.
NFT
Yeah.
products?
So before I get into the answer about the new standards on Algorand, for anyone new in the space, we're throwing a bunch of letters and numbers, and that probably is like alien talk. You can look these things up, or like a YouTube it. Just Google the terms, and there are handy guides out there. But essentially, what we're talking about is a protocol, a set of instructions that determines what this asset class looks like. So just like stocks and dollars and real estate are different asset classes, we have asset classes in Web3. Uh, so the standard had been the ASA, the Algorand Standard Asset, and which is like equivalent to ERC-20, right? Um, it's not as like sophisticated as the ERC-721, but there are other standards out there on Algorand. So there was the ARC-69. I think someone was trying to be funny. That one, I think it's going to die. It's not. It's a joke. Whatever. Um, I don't care if that offends anyone. The one that's really the one to watch is the ARC3. So that standard is coming up, and that's going to be more robust. It's much more sophisticated, and I think that is going to help drive the NFT ecosystem in Algorand. So I would be looking at that and watching for that. If you're interested in collecting NFTs in Algorand, collecting ASAs is great. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a way to show that you were there at the beginning, and that is important to some people. Some people want to show, hey, I'm an OG. I was here when this was in its infancy. It was really nascent and naive, and I've got the assets to prove that. And that establishes some proof, and that helps establish if people are interested in becoming thought leaders in the space. I know some people don't like the term, but whatever, it is what it is. If you want to become a leader in the space, having some proof like that doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then there will be mass adoption, and I think that is going to drive the economy, and that is like the ARC3 is what I'm talking about, and that's going to help to raise the tide of the NFT ecosystem in Algorand.
That's a really good point. I mean, you talked about historic value in a sense
Hmm.
of like the original NFTs that are currently out in the market today are
Right.
probably like a a V1 of like the eventual evolution of where we're going.
Right.
But if they live on the blockchain today and you are here now, and you're holding, then it has the ability to have some sort of historic value. Maybe not financial, but,
Right.
in terms of history, it means something.
Exactly.
But, like, consider what happened with the CryptoPunks, right? Like, they were great in 2008, they were all free, no one
Hmm.
cared about them, and
Right.
today they're going for, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and they were just recently acquired by Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is even crazier.
Wild. Yeah, it's really wild what the evolution of this technology and where things can go. And just because it is like this today doesn't mean it is like that tomorrow. And in Web3, I literally mean today and tomorrow. It can happen really fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1,000%. So We want to know what you think of our episode. We want to thank you for watching. And if there's anything you want to hear about, please let us know by commenting on the video or sending us some direct DMs on Twitter. You can find me as NFTMami. That's NFTMAMI on Twitter. And JP?
I am the real JP Miller, of course.
The real JP Miller, spelled out, right?
The THE, real, REAL, like Real. JP Miller, like the
Awesome.
good times.
Love it. Please subscribe, like, share with your friends. Let them know that we're here and we want to teach you about the world of Web3.